It's week 11. We've got every quarterback and every tight end ranked and tiered. So before Sunday, let's break down these updated rankings for week 11 of the 2024 NFL season. Welcome to E&M Fantasy Football, presented by ErvinandM.com, where I combine industry-leading data, Vegas sportsbooks, and expert analysis to provide you with optimal weekly rankings for the utmost accuracy when setting your weekly lineups in your fantasy football league. I'm writing this on Thursday night for Friday's video. Expect more videos every week for the other unit groupings like wide receiver and running back. And click the playlist for all the rankings for week 11. We begin the rankings with quarterbacks. It's worth mentioning there's no Panthers, no Giants, no Cardinals, or no Buccaneers. Sportsbooks have these quarterbacks projected to go over 270 total yards this week. They are Lamar Jackson, 280 over under, but 321 total yards per game. Woo! Good Lord. 2.4 touchdowns per game, the best in the league. They are 3-point favorites, which is kind of crazy. 48-point total against the Pittsburgh Steelers. 19th worst pass defense. They throw at the third highest clip in the league. He's the undisputed number one. Josh Allen, 267 over under, only 254 yards per game, but 1.7 touchdowns per game. They are 2-point favorites, with an okay total set at 46 in an absolute shootout against the league average Kansas City Chiefs. Brock Purdy, 281 over under, but 298 yards per game. 1.3 touchdowns per game. They are 6-point favorites with a 48-point total. They throw the ball at the second highest clip in the league in an absolute shootout with Seattle and their 20th ranked pass defense. Joe Cool, Joey B, Joe Burrow, Joey Brr, 266 over under, 267 yards per game, and 2.4 tutties per game. Oh boy. He's trying to take that position from Lamar. Too bad his team has zero defense. They are 1-point dogs facing the Chargers this week with a gigantic total set at 48 in an absolute shootout. They throw the ball at the fourth highest clip. Vegas tells us these top four guys are in the best position to go over 270 total yards with their arms and their legs in excellent matchups with high scoring totals. They are your undisputed S tier for week 11. A tier is for the rest of the elite quarterbacks projected for 250 to 260 total yards. Any of these guys could have a chance to finish in the top 5 and at 5. Don't click away. Let me explain. Russell Wilson. Mr.
Unlimited
has been outstanding since he took over from Fields. Nearly top 10 in passing, and he gets the worst pass defense unit in the league. Now, the Ravens aren't going to be easy, but Vegas has this game at a 3-point spread, and it is tied for the second highest scoring game of the week. So if you thought the Steelers were just going to lay down and wallow in their own
diarrhea,
think again. This is set to be one of the most exciting games of the week. Patrick Mahomes at 6. 260 over under, 264 yards per game. He throws the ball at the 9th highest clip in the league. They face the 18th worst pass defense in Buffalo. And it's going to be a close game. Chiefs are underdogs by 2, but it's worth mentioning that Patty LaVon is the only quarterback in history to remain over 500 across his career as underdogs by major sports books. This is going to be another must-watch game. Geno Smith at 7. 267 over-under, 305 yards per game. No one throws the ball at a higher rate than the Seahawks. And even though San Fran is 12th against the pass, they are 6-point dogs. You can expect Geno to airmail the ball first class as they play from behind. It's a tough matchup, but as long as he isn't sacked 6 times, he's got a chance for fantasy, not in real life. Kirk Cousins at 8, 240 over under, 263 yards per game. Only 4 quarterbacks throw more passing touchdowns than Kirk O'Chains, as well as yards per game. That makes him 5th in the league at both. He faces the 10th best passing defense, 5th best total defense, big, mean, scary Denver Broncos in Denver. Not good, but Vegas says it doesn't really matter. It's going to be a close game. Spread's only 2 points. He should be fine. And Jordan Love, in his return from rest, 229 over under, 260 yards per game. He throws 2.1 touchdowns per game, coming in at number 3 for tutties. Oh boy. They throw the ball at the 7th highest clip. He's got the toughest matchup out of the group, but besides Lamar Jackson and Joey B, no one throws more touchdowns in the league than J Love. Him and the boys are rested, and even though Chicago's 7th best pass defense unit is scary, their offense is in shambles, and Vegas tells us it won't be enough to keep the Bears in it. Packers are heavily favored by nearly 6 points. Lock him in. B tier is projected for about 240 yards. Pay attention to the tiers this week. There's a bit of a gap between them. We're going to kick it off with Jared Goff. Goffrey is one of the only quarterbacks to throw 5 interceptions and still win a game in history. 221 over under, 231 yards per game, nearly 2 touchdowns per game. That is a testament to how good his team and coaching is. He faces the sad Jacksonville McCorkle Jaguars, and the spread has grew to an unfathomable, ludicrous 14-point favorites. I mean, this is truly ridiculous. Goff doesn't throw the ball as much as the other guys in the tier, and probably won't have to this game either, but the fact that the Jags' pass defense is one of the worst in the league, and that he passes nearly 2 tutties per game, makes him a safe bet. Don't be scared. And at 11, ErvinandM.com. ErvinandM.com is my company my best friend and I started in 2020. We literally make everything ourselves by hand. We have earrings, rings, necklaces, bracelets, tie clips, apparel, and more. Over a dozen curated gemstones and 100 handcrafted products. If you need a gift or something special for yourself, use the promo code in the description, find something you love, and buy it today. Back to the video. If you like spending money and looking good, shop at my store, www.ervinandm.com. But if you don't, subscribe. It's free. And at 11, CJ Stroud. 236 over under, 237 yards per game. CJ and the Houston offense has been underwhelming in Nico Collins' absence, but the wideout king returns this week and should immediately elevate Stroud and the entire Houston offense. They get one of the best matchups possible, the completely flaccid Dallas Cowboys and their 17th ranked pass defense. Like the Jaguars, they have practically zero offense, and Vegas agrees it should be a slaughter at nearly 8-point favorites. The Crab King is next. Jameis Winston at 12, 245 over under, but 284 yards per game, doing his best Russell Wilson impression. I mean, you couple his yards, his passing rate, and the 29th worst Saints pass defense, and Winston throwing the ball at the 5th highest clip in the league is going to shock fans this week. Him and the boys are rested, and they are in for an air raid warfare with Derek Carr in a close game in New Orleans. As long as he doesn't throw 3 interceptions, he could easily upset Nola. And Fat Stafford at 13. 245 over under, 251 yards per game. Stafford is 8th in passing rate, but 2nd in the last 3 weeks, thanks to the return of his all-star wideouts. The Patriots are league average against the pass, and even though the total is a bit low at 43, They're 4-point favorites in New England versus Drake May. He should be fine. Tua, the throw-in Samoan Tagovailoa at 14. 240 over-under, only 231 yards per game. They're only 18th for passing offense, so we haven't seen the air raid offense of last year since Tua's return, maybe in part due to Tyreek's health or the fact that defenses have kind of figured out how to slow down the Mike McDaniel's fastest, high-paced offense. But at any rate, he faces the 11th best pass defense, but Vegas doesn't seem to be too worried as Miami is favored by 8 points. So he'll definitely be fine. And Sam Darnold at 15. 239 yards per game, 238 over-under, 1.9 tutties per game. Only 3 quarterbacks throw more touchdowns per game than Sam Darnold, which is a ludicrous fact that you can all check. They're top 12 in passing rate, and he's played well alongside his defense and best in the league coaching staff. Unfortunately, though, he gets the number 1 passing defense and number 1 total defense in the league, the Titans, which is perhaps more of a ludicrous fact that no one will believe, but you can check. The total is the lowest of the week, but never fear, Darnold and the boys are 6-point favorites. From here is your last chance for viability. Sportsbooks have this group for 220 to 230 passing yards this week. They either have tough matchups, a struggling offense, or low-scoring totals. We'll kick it off with Herbie. Justin Herbert at 16. 229 over-under, only 210 yards per game. In spite of the lines that I just cited, the Chargers are 1-point favorites at home versus the Bengals this week. The total is tied for the second highest this week at 48. Cincinnati has a bottom 10 passing defense as well as total defense, so either Herbert is going to have his best game of the season or J.K. Dobbins is going to have his best game of the season. The rankings should indicate the latter. GL. And Aaron Rodgers at 17. 239 over-under, only 225 passing yards per game. He tosses a decent amount of touchdowns at 1.5, but the New Jersey Jets are one of the meme teams, embarrassing fans and themselves just about every week. They just held a full contact tackling practice to remind these lifelong football athletes on exactly how to tackle correctly, which I'm sure Robert Saleh is just having a good laugh about. I mean, that is totally unprecedented. However, they face arguably the worst and at least equally embarrassing Colts that are laughably bad at 27th overall against the pass. So he should put up some points, but it's not going to be great. Bo Nix at 18. 235 over-under, only 226 yards per game. The Broncos are favored at home against one of the worst passing and total defenses in the league, the Atlanta Falcons. It should remain a close game, though, since Nix and Denver are bottom 9 in offensive yards per game, but top 5 in total defense. He'll put some points up, but the fact that he's the 5th most rushing quarterback this season isn't really going to make a difference for you in fantasy, unfortunately. Drake May at 19. 237 over-under, only 198 total yards per game. I mean, May is fun to watch, and he looks like one of the best rookie quarterbacks so far, but those stats are they're not enough. The Patriots are last in the league for total offensive yards, so the Rams' below-average pass defense shouldn't really help the Patriots' case this week. This is one of the lowest implied team totals on the week, and they are nearly 5-point dogs. Not good. Not good at all. And Derek Carr at 20. 204 over-under, but 213 yards per game. I mean, he throws 1.6 touchdowns per game. And that rate and his recent performance is the only thing keeping him from the RIP tier. This could be his last week with that courtesy, however. He faces the Browns' 13th best pass defense. The total is a bit low, but sportsbooks are telling us that it's going to be a close game, the closest game of the week, at home for the Saints. So he's the last viable anything. And from here, it's RIP. It's the rest. 210 yards or less. Caleb Williams, AR-15, Mayo Boy, McCorkle Jones, Gardner Minshew, Cooper Rush. Good Lord. That's your top quarterbacks. Let's do the tight ends. We only have 3 S-tier tight ends this week, but they are George Kittle, 55 over-under, but 70 yards per game. No one catches more touchdowns at tight end than George Kittle. And it's not even close. At 0.9, almost a touchdown per game. And what's more, only 10 offensive players league-wide, position-wide, catch more tutties than him. He is the undisputed best tight end in the league for fantasy. Not even close. It had to be said. Brock Bowers, 53 over-under, 65 yards per game. And he's doing it on the 29th worst total offense in the league, the Raiders. What a stud. And Travis Kelce, 66 over-under, only 55 yards per game. He's the most loved and hated tight end of this era. You see what I did there? These top 3 tight ends are all projected to be in the best position by Vegas sportsbooks to go over 50 receiving yards. That is the highest amount for week 11. They are your elite S-tier tight ends, undisputed. The next tier is for the rest of the tight end ones, projected for about 40 to 50 receiving yards. Any of these guys could finish top 4. They just have lower floors than the guys above. And we'll kick it off with Tucker Kraft. Do you know who scores the next most touchdowns at the tight end position? It's the waiver wire king, the people's champ, Tucker Kraft at 0.6 tutties per game. Chicago's defense is scary, but 66% of tight ends were able to go over against the Bears this season, and don't be scared. Tucker is more likely than not going to pad those 40 receiving yards with a tutty. Lock him in! Lock him in! Sorry for yelling. David Njoku is next. 53 over-under, 43 yards per game. He's rested. His little hamstrings, his ankle, his burnt face, and he's ready to dominate. 70% of tight ends get home against New Orleans, and Njoku is elite with literally anyone other than Deshaun Watson. He scores slightly more often than the others from 10 and below at a 30% tutty rate. Expect Jameis to continue to rely on the big, scary 6'4", 250-pound, 4.6 second, 40, 11-foot broad-jumping monster. Kyle Pitts is next at 6. 41 over-under and 48 yards per game. Pitts has been consistent for the first time ever, going over in 75% of his games and scoring a tutty at a 30% rate. Denver boasts a top 5 defense. They hold 60% of tight ends to the under. Let's be real. If you have Pitts, you're starting him. No shot you sit him for Taysom Hill or Jonnu Smith. It's not great, but you're putting him in there. Sam Laporta at 7. 40 over-under, 41 yards per game. His shoulder is hurt, but since week 4, he has went over 66% of the contests. He hauls in a tutty at also a 30% rate. Couple that with the fact that the Jags allowed every single tight end not named Jordan Akins to go over against them. He should be fine, as long as his AC joint sprain doesn't hold him out. And TJ Hawkinson at 8. 48 over-under, 49 yards per game. I mean, we have a tiny sample for Hawkinson, but it's worth mentioning that he basically immediately made an impact and had a connection with Darnold. In spite of 0 touchdowns, 8 targets is very good. He should be just fine, and to be honest, I expect him to rise more than this as the season goes on. B tier. This is where it starts to get dicey. This tier is projected for 30 to 40 yards. The volatility is high. GL. Mark Andrews at 9. His 50% touchdown rate and highest in the league passing quarterback keep him out of the C tier, in spite of him averaging the least amount of yards compared to the others in the same tier. He's still a relied upon red zone threat, and for the top 12, that's pretty much all you need, given the deplorable tight end fantasy landscape. He needs that tutty, so it's still a coin flip. GL. Hunter Henry at 10. 36 over under, 43 yards per game. He's questionable. I don't care. After 5 games of going over to the tune of 53 yards per game, he finally regressed back down to earth in his last contest. But don't be scared. 100% of the tight ends were able to go over against the LA Rams this season, and Hunter Henry should be no exception. There's an 11% chance that Austin Hooper ruins that, but literally no one is betting on that. Expect him to positively regress back to form. Jonnu Smith at 11. 32 over under, 38 yards per game. I mean, 38 yards per game is pretty good. His matchup is okay against the Raiders. It's a 62% probability of him hitting that over. He has a 10% touchdown rate. I mean, this is where we're at, and this is what you're getting at the bottom of the tight end barrel, albeit at 11 in the rankings. It's tough out here, but it gets worse. Evan Ingram at 12. Enter McCorkle Jones. And what happens to one of the best tight ends when you're in one of the worst offenses with one of the worst quarterbacks facing one of the best offenses and defenses in the league? Yikes. 45% probability of him hitting the over, but 9 targets ain't gonna be enough when half of them are uncatchable. From here, though, it is your last viable anything. It's 20 to 30 yards and pure desperation. And it's Taysom Hill at 13. 38 yards per game, 50% touchdown rate. I mean, it's touchdown or bust. And anybody telling you anything else is out of their mind. He is the biggest wild card in the league, and under no circumstances, all right, listen, under no circumstances should you play Taysom Hill over the other players in the rankings, unless you have literally no shot at winning and need like a 20-point miracle. Jake Ferguson at 14. I mean, copy and paste what I just said about Evan Ingram here for the Ferg Daddy. All jokes aside, his quarterback is probably worse. His matchup is probably worse. And to be frank, him and Ingram are in the same sinking boat. RIP. Mike Gesicki on your icky at 15. 25 over under, 38 yards per game. I mean, perhaps the second biggest wild card at the position. Without T. Higgins, the Bengals threw Gesicki in the slot, and he was able to have a few career games. That being said, it wasn't enough to stop him from turning back into a pumpkin in his last game, sans Higgins. And what's more, T finally logged a practice for the first time since his injury, so that's not good for him. And Will Dissly at 16, and his opponent on the other side of the ball. Will Dissly has done just barely enough to get himself a headshot and not slip back into the RIP tier. It's a 27 over under, 30 yards per game, no touchdowns at all. I mean, he has a chance this week, perhaps the best chance all season in terms of the implied team scoring total, Herbert's passing resurgence, and overall health, and the fact that 80% of tight ends hit the over against the essentially defenseless Bengals. I mean, he's got a chance, but it's pure desperation. GL. From here, though, it's the rest. It's RIP. It's less than 20 yards. Cole Kmet, Pat Fryermuth, Dalton Schultz. You know what I'm saying? Get you some gear from ErvinandThem.com. Look your best. You look like shit. Juwan Johnson, Colby Parker, it doesn't matter. Anyone and everyone else. I'll throw your quarterbacks and tight ends full screen back on screen now. If you complain, I'll post the DST rankings in the comments. Leave your questions below, and sincerely, I hope this helps everyone watching. Thank you all for your time. All the rankings and news for Week 11 will be in the playlist in the top right of your screen. Support me, support you. Subscribe and turn on post notifications so you can see all the videos each week before submitting your lineups. It's free, so it's a good value. But if you like looking good and spending money, spend it at my store and watch some more videos.